Republicans, who historically have always fought against so-called welfare programs, anything that helps the average person. I mean, Republicans are there if you're talking tax breaks for billionaires. Republicans are there if you're talking about deregulating industry. Republicans are there if you're talking about allowing large monopolies to crush small local businesses like a bug. But when you start talking about helping out hungry people or poor people, Republicans start talking about, individual responsibility. In other words, don't ask our tax dollars to pay for your welfare. But they have figured out a way to take, in this case, this article was about SNAP because, SNAP is like very much in the news right now. But this applies to SNAP, Medicaid, and TANF, these three programs. Temporary assistance for needy families, TANF. In all three of these cases, Republicans are pushing for work requirements. And in fact, about a third of the people who are on SNAP, who are getting food stamps, are working, and about 80% of the people who are working full time. Which raises a question. Why is it that somebody who's working full time still qualifies for SNAP benefits? And the obvious answer is that, full-time wages suck in a lot of parts of the country. And a lot of these employers, these big employers, pay crap wages, knowing that their employees will then qualify for food stamps and Medicaid and for a 5-year period for TANF, for TANF. So why is that? Well, this is the scam. This goes back to David Ricardo's Iron Law of Wages from 1817 in his book on the economy of wages, and I forget the whole title of it, but Ricardo wrote this brilliant book, and he had this thing called David Ricardo's Iron Law of Wages, which is basically that there's a bunch of variables that go into wages, but generally speaking, employers will pay the least amount that they have to given the local cost of living. Now, obviously, there's a whole bunch of variables that have to do with things like skilled workers in particular. But for unskilled workers, for the bottom of the food chain, as it were, for people who are working for $7.25 an hour, the federal minimum wage, what these employers who are paying this, and there's a lot of them, we've got tens of millions of people in America who are literally making that much, and many of them working full time. Those are the folks that we're providing food stamps to. Those are the folks that we're providing TANF benefits, which pays for rent and utilities. Those are the folks that we're giving medical services to through Medicaid. The employers love this. I mean, this scam is the way it should be. Is that if you have a full-time job, you don't get food stamps and Medicaid and TANF because you're earning enough income to meet the local cost of living. And so the reason why Republicans have demanded work requirements is to subsidize these low-wage employers. It's purely that. And I don't know why nobody in the media ever talks about this. Every time the Republicans come out and go, oh, we need to talk about work requirements on SNAP. I mean, they actually held hearings about this in Congress, a couple of months ago in the Senate. And Bernie was pointing out that, these, to a large extent, these SNAP benefits, at least a third of them, about 30%, are subsidies to low-wage employers, to, this is the equivalent of Walmart kind of thing, as the Walton family buys another yacht, because they don't have to pay that much money to their people because, hey, they qualify for food stamps and things like that. So obviously you don't want to just cut people off from food stamps and TANF and Medicaid. But I think this whole idea of work requirements is just a massive scam that it seems like, the Democrats never talk about and the media hasn't figured out, and the Republicans are just laughing all the way to the bank, them and their low-wage employers. So hopefully this election last night will put a little steel in the spine of Democrats and give them, the voice, the courage to speak about issues like this. Meanwhile, the guy who hasn't been in a grocery store in years, that would be Donald Trump, comes out and says, nothing happened yesterday. Well, sort of. I mean, he's really kind of all over the map. Louise and I had a bet is the wrong word. We were a question. how as the night was going on and we were watching the returns, and we always watch the return. Louise gets all excited about this because her dad was the assistant attorney general for the state of Michigan. His boss, Frank Kelly, was the attorney general, and he was a political appointee. And so Louise's dad's job depended on how the election went in Michigan. So they always watched the returns. And I'm like, hey, can we watch something else for an hour and then just come back? Oh, no, this is exciting stuff. And I get it. And it is for I guess for most people. But so anyhow, what the discussion we had as the evening was going on was, how is Trump going to play this? I mean, it's increasingly looking, and the early indicators of the polling were showing, but it was even beyond the polling. It's increasingly looking like there was going to be a Democratic blowout last night. So Trump doesn't deal well with losing. So what's he going to say? Is he going to say the election was rigged? Is he going to say that it's because he wasn't on the ticket? Is it going to be because he's going to say that Democrats were lying? Is it going to be because he's going to say that John Thune won't break the filibuster? I mean, what's the deal? What excuse? Because there will be an excuse. He's going to blame somebody. He's not going to take the blame for it himself. He never does, under any circumstances, for anything. And sure enough, here it is. Trump puts on his Nazi-infested social media site, Trump was not on the ballot, and the shutdown were the reason that Republicans lost elections tonight. Yeah. I think Trump was on the ballot, and I think that's the reason Republicans lost so badly last night. And then Trump later posts, after when it was called for Mamdani, that was when Trump posts this thing that says, and so it begins. Now, meanwhile, as you know, I have been saying for some time now that the Republican Party really should kill a filibuster. I mean, that they could anyway. I mean, as I mentioned yesterday, I said this on Ali Velshi's show on MSNBC. Congressman Khanna and I talked about it on this program. He then went on Fox and he talked about it on Fox News, that if the Republicans wanted to end the filibuster, all John Thune has to do is put forward a change to the Senate rules to end the filibuster. And he could do it, by the way, just for that one particular law, or he could do it forever. But, if he ends the filibuster, then Republicans can pass all kinds of stuff that they can't pass right now because Democrats will block it. And then America could really see how much damage these guys can do. And I think that would be a good thing, and I think it would set the stage for Democrats to come into power in 3 years and undo all that stuff and actually create a genuine progressive governing majority. So anyhow, I've been the voice in the wilderness about this for 6 weeks now that the Congress has been out, or 5 weeks that the House has been on vacation during this shutdown. And Trump last night went on Truth Social and just went nuts, attacking John Thune. John Thune, of course, is the guy who's replaced Mitch McConnell as the Senate Majority Leader in the Senate. And he basically runs the Senate. And he's the one who would have to, approve breaking the filibuster. And so this is one of the White House advisors off the record told Axios that Trump is going to start pushing really hard to end the filibuster. This is a quote. He will call them at 3 o'clock in the morning. He will blow them up in their districts. He will call them un-American. He will call them old creatures of a dying institution. Believe you me, he's going to make their lives just hell. End of quote. Now, you've got a couple of Republican senators who've said, well, okay, we'll talk about it. But by and large, that ain't happening. Hang on just a second here. I got a couple of names. Yeah, Bernie Moreno of Ohio says, well, yeah, we could make this a Republican-only vote. He said that on Fox So-Called News. Jim Banks of Indiana told Axios he'd consider changing the rule under certain circumstances. But John Thune is saying, no way, not going to do it. Because John Thune knows that eventually the Republicans in the Senate are going to be in the minority. Or at least he believes that. And Donald Trump, I don't think believes that. I think Donald Trump, Apropos of the earlier caller who suggested that Trump would use troops in the streets to basically stop elections and, freeze democracy in America, I think Donald Trump is actually thinking like that and planning like that. And I think this is a very, very dangerous time. But I still think we should end the filibuster.